Hello and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host, Chris Branch. This is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, marketer, and content creator really wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one subject. And today we're going to talk about a subject that we've spoken about a number of times before on the podcast, and that is deepfakes. And the reason why we're going to talk about it today is because it's part of the marketing example series where we look at what brands and organizations are doing around marketing and generative AI. And we can't ignore what's been happening in the world of deepfakes and marketing and advertising, because it's something that we're seeing more and more of. And that is people or organizations creating adverts with famous people as the spokesperson, even though the famous person has not agreed. And the one we're going to
awareness of it at all in this
no
case.
awareness, yeah, exactly. And the one we're talking about today is one of the biggest artists, if not the biggest artist in the world right now, and that's Taylor Swift. So before we go into details, Chris, do you want to quickly just kind of break down exactly what deepfakes is in 2024?
It's something we predicted and talked about. We obviously saw the Mr. Beast scandal. We also saw a Joe Rogan scandal. When we talked about these things where these people, these highly influential people in certain categories, whether it's podcasting or music or YouTube or, back to music again with Taylor Swift. We also saw Drake, fake Drake and all of this, no idea that he was going to be made into a new song. Someone just used his voice and made a bunch of songs and they went viral and it got like millions and millions of views. And it sparked up this whole thing, which was clearly when we're able to do these things, people will abuse it, especially small people with not a lot to lose. Now, this is another example that we found where it's a small kitchenware company that probably no one's ever heard of, running Instagram and Facebook deepfakes, which is essentially making someone look like they're doing everything. It looks like Taylor Swift. It sounds like Taylor Swift. Her mouth moves with any language you want her to say, and it will say anything on their behalf. So this similar thing happened with Mr. Beast, where they offered some stupid promotion that he was never involved in. It looked exactly like what a Mr. Beast video would look like, and therefore duped a lot of his audience in order to pay scammers, essentially. Yeah. Now, the bigger story here is that Facebook and Instagram let this stuff run, even though they are fully aware and even making their own AI models, producing some of these deepfakes, ironically, then being used on their own platform in order to scam people. So that's a really big story,
Yeah, I think that's a huge story. There's a couple of things, just to quickly go back on some of the things that you said. One of them, the stainless steel company was called Stanley Tumblers. There was a stainless steel company called Stanley Tumblers, and also a cookware company called La Creuset. So that's Creusset. Now, what you're going to find, and this is where it gets really confusing, is that the companies, because they probably are not involved in it. So, for example, Visa gift cards or Apple iPhones, what you're finding is that people are usually getting access to this, whether it be through a third party or somehow getting access to these products and selling it that way. So they're not actually sending people to the actual official store. What they're doing is they're saying you can win this in a competition, or you can buy it off of like eBay or something like that. So it looks like the brand's behind it, but they're not. And that makes it even more confusing, because even though it's a slight thing, if you're just listening to Taylor Swift say something in such a particular way, that's where you get a lot of confusion. And
the reason they're targeting people like Taylor Swift is because their fans trust them to the utmost degree. They are so deeply embedded as a fan in terms of, they buy everything they ever do. Some of these mega fans. So it's obvious that these are the easiest people to scam, because if it looks like her and it sounds like her, they will buy it. And that's not a good position.
Exactly. And this really kind of looks at the dark side of social media, influencer marketing, and generative AI. Some of the things that you can do, which is not great. But I think that one of the things that you mentioned there, and that is the role of social media platforms.
Allowing
How can they stop it? I've watched Martin Lewis, so the money saving expert Martin Lewis.
Yeah.
I've seen him countless times complain about people who are using him because he's a great person to use. People trust him for money advice. So what's happening is these scammers are using deepfake technology, which is just a Google search away to find, as well as voice cloning, and getting him to say anything that they want. But because it's him, people trust. They take it, lose money, then they contact him on Twitter or his website because they know how to access him, having a go, which ruins his reputation, even though he's got nothing to do with it. Now, what he's done is, he's even had, I think, a lot of legal stuff that's gone on about this, but still, it happens on the platforms, especially on ads. And this is what I don't get, because to get an ad up, you have to go through quite a rigorous process, really, to get it to officially go through. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think we've seen massive companies, tech companies especially, like X and others, have just laid off massive amount of human staff that would have maybe caught up on these things. And that, hackers are able to get through algorithms and bots because that's what's been replaced the humans. So it shows a need for human, validation and authenticship and stuff like this. But we also talked about this, everybody's now going to ask for a government ID in order to validate that you're an online social presence of a human and not an AI bot of the future, because this is going to become very much more difficult to spend marketing dollars to AIs. No one wants to market to AIs. They don't have purchasing power. And they don't get duped by online marketing gimmicks either. They're not going to fall for your silly sales things and whatever. So they're not a good spending of your dollar for advertising purposes. So we're going to have to start proving human authenticity, which is also gonna. But this is the early wave of scams getting through on major platforms that shouldn't be. I would understand it more, for example, if Meta did not produce generative AI tools, and therefore they didn't know what they were up against. But the fact of the matter is they're actually one of the leading companies when it comes to producing these models. So they should be fully aware of what to scan for ads, and they're just not doing it. It's not good enough, I'm afraid.
I think you're going to get to the point very soon where it's look, this is not acceptable. You've got to have some form of responsibility. And
it does not bode well for the USA elections that these ads are getting through right now, because imagine the millions of dollars that we spent on Trump smear campaigns in very, very short few weeks.
Trump smear campaigns, Biden smear campaign. It's going to get dirty. As we've been saying since the beginning of the podcast, this year, especially because of the elections, is going to be the AI elections, and deepfake technology is going to play a big part. But the one thing I would say, which I don't like so much, is that when you hear the word deepfake, you think it's something that's negative. But actually, there is some a lot of good stuff that can come out of deepfakes. There's a lot of things that can make certain things
creativity for sure.
Creativity for sure. So one of the things that we really want to say is that even though we're talking about marketing examples, and in this case, it's just an example of something that's negative. And even though when we do talk about deepfakes, and we do talk a lot about different technologies and stuff, we want to let people know that we like to look at both sides. We're not someone that's like generative AI, it's just got a halo above it and everything is great. We will be doing a lot of episodes around some of the dark sides of generative AI too, because we want to give you guys a good balance so you can make informed decisions. So deepfake technology, don't think it's just negative. There is some really creative things that you can do with deepfake.
Definitely. I think just to back up everything you just said, it's all about whose hands it's in. If it's a good actor, could be creative. If it's a bad actor, could be scam. That's really as simple as it gets, But there'll be loads more episodes about this in the future, because they'll be both good and bad.
Yeah, exactly. So in a nutshell, when it comes to deepfake technology, when it comes to celebrities, you're going to see a lot more of this technology, more than likely, especially this year being the election year, used in a negative way, whether it be to get people to take some form of action. And that is usually an action that's going to for a voting or buying. So one of the things that we need to do as a society is be more aware of the technology, that it doesn't fool us, but also we hope that the platforms like Meta, Google, are going to start having some form of restriction, some form of regulation around ads and deepfakes.
Yeah, there should be a very harsh penalty for doing stuff like this.
Agreed.